Thousands of years ago, ancient hands carved stories into clay tablets, stories that challenge everything we think we know about who we are. They tell of powerful beings who came down from the heavens, not gods but flesh and blood architects who engineered humanity itself. They were called the Anunnaki, and some believe this isn't just a myth, it's a detailed history of our very creation. Ancient legends say that gods called the Anunnaki kick-started our evolution. For decades, science has brushed these tales off as fantastic fiction. But what if the proof we've been looking for has been inside us all along? What if it's written in our DNA? Let's see what modern genetics actually has to say about our mysterious origins, and whether it backs up or debunks these incredible claims. Before we get to the DNA, you have to know the story. It starts in ancient Sumer in modern-day Iraq with the first known civilization on Earth. They left behind thousands of cuneiform tablets, and according to the late author Zecharia Sitchin, these tablets tell an unbelievable origin story. Sitchin's controversial translations describe a race of beings from a planet called Nibiru, who he claimed arrived on Earth over 450,000 years ago. Their mission? To mine gold, an element they desperately needed to save their home planet's atmosphere. But the work was brutal. The texts allegedly tell of a rebellion among the working-class Anunnaki, who were tired of the back-breaking labor. The leaders needed a solution, and they found one in biological engineering. The Anunnaki's chief scientist, a being named Enki, came up with a plan: create a primitive worker. They would design a slave race by mixing their own divine genes with the DNA of an early hominid already living on Earth. Proponents of this theory argue these ancient texts aren't myths, but technical records. They point to descriptions that sound a lot like modern in vitro fertilization, talking about mixing the essence of a god with the clay of the earth. The result was the first Homo sapiens, a hybrid created to serve its masters. Now, mainstream academics have long called this pseudoscience, but as geneticists started unlocking the secrets of our own genome, they found a story far more complex and in some ways, far stranger than they ever imagined. The question is, does it line up with the Anunnaki tale? One of the biggest questions in human evolution is why our species, Homo sapiens, seem to take such a massive leap forward. Anunnaki theorists point to the sudden appearance of modern humans around 300,000 years ago, complete with brains 50% larger than our predecessors, and the ability to use complex language. They argue this wasn't gradual change, it was an abrupt upgrade, exactly what you'd expect from outside intervention. For a long time, the standard evolutionary model was a nice, slow, straight line. But that idea is now being challenged by science itself. Recent discoveries show our origins are more like a braided stream, with different ancient human populations mixing and mingling their genes over hundreds of thousands of years. The idea of one sudden leap, however, just isn't what the evidence shows. Instead, science reveals a fascinating clue that points to natural evolution: human chromosome 2. While apes have 24 pairs of chromosomes, we have 23. It turns out that 2 of our ancestral chromosomes fuse together to form our chromosome 2. This fusion event is a perfect sign of a natural evolutionary path, not the clean work of a master geneticist. The evidence points to a beautifully messy natural history, not a sudden artificial creation. For years, the story was simple. Our ancestors evolved in Africa, then spread out and replaced everyone else. But then scientists sequenced the DNA of our ancient cousins, the Neanderthals and Denisovans, and made a discovery that blew the doors off our understanding of the past. These weren't just distant relatives we outcompeted. Our ancestors interbred with them. Today, most people with non-African ancestry have about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, though that amount can vary. What's more, populations across Asia and the Americas carry genes from the mysterious Denisovans, another lost branch of the human family. This proved the simple, out-of-Africa story was missing some major chapters. You can imagine how Anunnaki theorists reacted. For them, this was huge. Were the Neanderthals and Denisovans just other experiments, failed prototypes the Anunnaki created before they finally got it right with Homo sapiens? It's a compelling idea, but it's one without a shred of scientific evidence. Mainstream science sees these hominins exactly as they are, natural sister species that evolved in different places. Our interactions with them were a normal consequence of migration. We didn't just replace them, we absorbed parts of them into our very own genome. These aren't failed alien experiments, they are the echoes of our long-lost relatives, ghosts that still live inside us. What if the proof of alien tampering wasn't in the genes we understand, but in the ones we don't? When the human genome was first mapped, scientists were shocked to learn that only about 2% of our DNA actually codes for proteins. The other 98% was famously and mistakenly labeled junk DNA. For ancient astronaut theorists, this was the smoking gun. They claimed this DNA wasn't junk at all, but a massive dormant genetic hard drive. It could be holding anything, a manufacturer's signature, or an alien genetic code, just waiting to be switched on. It's a cool idea, like a message from our creators hidden in plain sight, but science has been busy figuring out what this so-called junk actually does. And far from being useless, we now know these non-coding regions are incredibly important. They act like the switches and dimmers that control our active genes, telling them when and where to turn on and off. Studies have shown that mutations in these very regions are linked to diseases, proving they play a critical role in our health. While there's still much to learn, there's absolutely no scientific evidence that our non-coding DNA contains alien messages. The secrets we're finding are biological, not extraterrestrial. The junk DNA argument, once a favorite of Anunnaki theorists, is getting weaker every day. Of all the genetic mysteries, one of the strangest is the Rh-negative blood type. Most people are Rh-positive, meaning they have a protein on their red blood cells, but about 15% of people of European descent lack this protein, and this small difference can cause serious problems during pregnancy if an Rh-negative mother carries an Rh-positive child. To Anunnaki theorists, this makes no evolutionary sense. Why would a potentially harmful trait survive and become so common in one group of people? And their answer is radical. Rh-negative blood isn't fully human. They suggest it's a marker of the Anunnaki bloodline, passed down from the gods. They often point to the high concentration of Rh-negative blood among the Basque people in Spain and France as proof of an ancient, preserved lineage. But science tells a much less alien story. The Rh-negative blood type is caused by a gene deletion, a common type of mutation found all throughout nature. Genetics can explain why it's stuck around through things like genetic drift or even a potential still unproven advantage, like better resistance to certain parasites. While its exact origin is still debated, there is zero evidence connecting it to extraterrestrials. The Rh-negative riddle is a fascinating quirk of human genetics, not a sign of a divine inheritance. So, where does that leave us? On one side, you have the incredible story presented by writers like Sitchin, who insisted that Sumerian tablets were literal history about our creation by aliens. On the other, you have the entire field of modern genetics. Mainstream scholars flat out reject Sitchin's work. Sumerologists and linguists say he twisted the text to fit his narrative. For example, Sitchin claimed Anunnaki meant those who from heaven to earth came. But scholars agree it actually translates to something like princely blood or seed of Anu, referring to their mythological parentage as the offspring of the sky god Anu. And the creation accounts in the actual tablets use beautiful metaphorical language, common in myths all over the world, not the language of a lab report. To date, not a single peer-reviewed study has found any credible evidence of artificial manipulation or an extraterrestrial signature in our DNA. The claims about sudden leaps in alien bloodlines simply aren't backed up by the genetic record, which shows our DNA is the result of a long, messy, but entirely natural evolution right here on Earth. But our understanding of the human genome is just getting started. So what do you think? Is our DNA the product of millions of years of evolution, or is there a chapter in our story that science just hasn't found yet? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you want to keep exploring that fine line between myth and science, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. We're left with two powerful stories of our creation. One is written in stone and myth, a dramatic epic of gods and gold that satisfies our deep need for answers about where we belong in the cosmos. The other story is written in our DNA. It's a more complicated tale of gradual change, of ancient migrations, and of meeting and mixing with relatives who are now long gone. Ancient DNA hasn't revealed the Anunnaki. Instead, it has uncovered a human story that is deeper and richer than we ever knew. It tells us we are the product of millions of years of survival and adaptation, And while there's no credible evidence to support the idea of alien engineers, the Anunnaki myth lasts because it asks the biggest questions of all. Who are we? And why are we here? Science gives us one set of answers, but the enduring power of these ancient stories shows that we'll probably always be searching for more.